Hey guys, so today we're in Plainfield, Wisconsin, and as you know, on this channel I've covered a lot of tragic events over time, but what happened here goes way beyond tragic. It's evil, it's horrible, it's hard to talk about, but the things that this man did, there's movies based on his life and based on the things that he did. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Psycho, and Silence of the Lambs are all based on what this guy did. He was a terrible human being, and we're in Plainfield today, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about his life, a little bit about the things that he did, and we're going to go to a lot of the places where that happened, and I'm going to tell you the stories. So if you don't have a weak stomach and you are intrigued by these kind of cases, come along. It's going to be a good ride today. Right now we're just off of 2nd and Archer here in Plainfield, and this right here is the property, or former property, of Ed Gein. Now the farmhouse that he used to live in was just past this gate, and now Ed Gein was born in 1906. He was born to parents George and Augusta, and his father was kind of an alcoholic who couldn't hold down a job. His mother Augusta hated him, and she put the idea in the heads of her boys that women were evil, that they were tools of the devil. She was highly religious, and I think, and a lot of other people seem to think, that she had a huge part in the way that Ed Gein turned out. Now, Ed's father passed away in 1940, and Ed and his brother Henry kind of took over. They took odd jobs to support the family. And in 1944, Henry and Ed were burning away some of the vegetation on the property. The fire got a little bit out of control and attracted the attention of the fire department. Now, after the fire was done and over with, the fire department found the body of Ed Gein's brother Henry, and it's widely believed that Henry was killed by Ed, but there's no proof of that. Now, I'm not entirely sure how far back his property went or where exactly the house stood on this property, but here is a picture of what the house looked like when it was here. Now, after Ed was arrested and they figured out what horrible things happened on this property and the things they found on this property, the townspeople burned it down before it was set to go on public auction. Nobody in Plainfield wants to remember this. It's a horrible thing. It's the biggest thing the town's known for, and people here absolutely hate this. And they don't want people to come by and make this a tourist attraction or anything like that, and they didn't want it to become a museum. But history needs to be remembered, whether it be good or bad. Now, this is a pretty creepy shed. I'm not sure if this is part of the property or what this is, or if this is original to the time period. If you have any idea, leave a comment, please, because I'm curious as to what this is. Now, a little more about Ed Gein. A lot of people think that he was a notorious serial killer, and you can't exactly classify him as a serial killer because he only killed 2 people that was ever proven. One was Bernice Warden, which we'll get into in just a little bit, and Mary Hogan, who was a tavern owner in town. Now, he killed these 2 women, and everybody else, he was more of a grave robber than anything else, except he wasn't robbing jewels. He was digging up bodies, and what he would do is he would often go to Plainfield Cemetery, and there were a couple other local cemeteries he would go to, and after a funeral the night of, he would dig up the body and then rebury the coffin with nothing in it. And we'll get into this a little bit when we get to the cemetery in a bit, but he would dismember these bodies on this property here. He had a shed in the back. A lot of things were discovered in the house. Now, this is where you need to have a little bit of a strong stomach. Some of the things that were found between his house and the barn in the back were whole human bones and fragments. There was a wastebasket made of human skin covering several chair seats. There were skulls on the bedpost. There were bowls made from human skulls. There were leggings made from human skin. And the list kind of goes on and on. The head of one of his victims, Mary Hogan, her skull was found in a box. There was a heart found in front of his stove. Just the levels of things that he did and kept and that were discovered in his house, there's never been another case like it. But this is where it all happened. This is one more little look at the property, but if you can just imagine the things that happened on this property, Ed Gein would come home and he would have bodies in his pickup truck, and he would take them apart and make his little creations right here on this property. And I also don't know if it's just being in the middle of the woods here or what, but it feels about 20 degrees cooler right here than it does on the street. And I'm really not sure what this barn is, but it's intrigued me enough to come back and look at it a couple times, but I'm not getting any closer in this because it's creepy and you just don't know what's here. Now, this is downtown Plainfield, and on the morning of November 16th of 1957, Plainfield Hardware Store was owned by a woman named Bernice Warden. And it was deer hunting season. Everybody was out and about, and there weren't too many people down here. Now, Warden's department store was the building up here on my right-hand side across the street behind this truck. And Ed Gein walked in there that morning. He knew everybody in town. Everybody knew him. Nobody really thought too much about it other than the fact he might have been a little bit weird, but nobody knew what was actually going on back at his house. Now, this right here is what ended up getting Ed Gein caught. He went into this hardware store and he bought a gallon of antifreeze, and the receipt was made out to Ed Gein, and that was the last receipt that was written out by this store. Now, Bernice Warden's son was the deputy sheriff. His name was Frank Worden, and he entered the store around 5 o'clock that day to find the store's cash register open, and there were bloodstains on the floor. Now, Frank told investigators that on the evening before his mother's disappearance, that Gein had been in there in the store and that he was going to return for a gallon of antifreeze. Now, the sales slip was there, and it was, like I said, it was the last one written, but it happened right in here. Now, after this, Ed Gein was a person of interest in the crime, and the sheriff's department they arrested him at a Plainfield grocery store, and then they went to search the Gein farm, and that's when they found all the horrific stuff that was on his property. Now, this is the inside of what used to be the Bernice Warden hardware store. It looks like it's not open now, and it looks like it was a True Value hardware store just a little bit ago, but now it's some indoor garage sale or something like that. Now, during the time of the arrest, they didn't realize just what they would be coming across and what exactly Ed Gein had done up till this point. They didn't know about the grave robberies or anything like that. Now, once he was inside, Ed Gein shot Bernice Warden, and he ended up taking her out the back door and loaded her into a pickup truck. And we're going to go back there and just see what things look like now and try to figure out which door he might have used. Now, this building it's pretty old, and I would imagine that most of the stuff is all original. So we'll just take a quick look back here and we'll try to figure out what door he might have used. Pretty overgrown here. Now, it could have been this door here because this would lead into the hardware store, and so would this one. But my guess would be he was out here and just loaded her body into the pickup truck from right here. Now, this other silver door looks like it's a lot newer, so I doubt that's the one. And then if you go over here, here's another door, but I'm not entirely sure if this whole building was part of the hardware store at the time or if it was just the other two. But it's very likely that it could have been this door too. But it's pretty creepy if you think about it. I mean, this is the crime that ended up getting Ed Gein caught. Now, there are a couple really evil things about this particular part here. Now, when he took Bernice Warden's body back to his home, he decapitated her, and her head was found in a burlap sack in his home, and her heart was found in a plastic bag in his kitchen. And the part that's even more disturbing is that Bernice Warden is buried in Plainfield Cemetery in eyesight of the final burial place of Ed Gein. They're buried in the same cemetery. Now we're going to go to Plainfield Cemetery next, and I'm going to show you where Ed Gein's buried, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about his crimes. And there's a couple other things that I find kind of horrific about this case that I'll get into when we get over there. But this is a final look at the Bernice Warden hardware store. Now, in some way, I'm kind of surprised that they haven't torn this place down. Now, I'd also like to mention that Plainfield is a really nice town. It feels like you're kind of stepping back in time, but people that live here absolutely do not want anything to do with Ed Gein. They don't want to talk about it, they don't want to discuss it, and they don't want to know that that's the reason that you're here. So if you come here, kind of keep it on the down low, the reason why you're visiting Plainfield, because otherwise you're not going to get a very warm welcome. Now this is Plainfield Cemetery, and this is where Ed Gein is buried, as well as a couple of his victims. Now let's talk about that. Now I want to start off by saying that his other victim, Mary Hogan, was a tavern owner in town. Ed Gein shot her and killed her. She is also buried in Plainfield Cemetery, but she is in an unmarked location, so we're not able to visit her gravesite. Now, Ed Gein, this is one of the 3 cemeteries that he would routinely come to dig up bodies. Now, I was told that this is one of them, Marie Bergstrom, that this was one of the victims that he dug up. And there's a couple of them here, and I'll show you the ones that I know about. I know that there's a few more. Now, after Ed Gein was arrested and when he was questioned, he told investigators that between 1947 and 1952, he made as many as 4 visits to the local graveyards to exhume bodies. And he said that he was in a dazed-like state, and he said about 30 of those visits, he came out of the daze in the cemetery and left the graveyard without a body, and he returned home empty-handed. Now, on the other occasions, he dug up the graves of recently buried middle-aged women he thought resembled his mother. Now, right in front of me here, this is the grave of Eleanor Adams, and this was another one of the graves that Ed Gein dug up. Now, she is not buried here. Now, after he dug her up, there obviously wasn't really anything left to bury, but this is just an absolute tragedy, and the worst part of this isn't even necessarily what happened, although that's bad enough. If I zoom out here, she's buried right in front of Ed Gein. Now, this is Floyd Adams, the husband of Eleanor, and he was, after he found out about a lot of this stuff, he had her exhumed, and they found the empty casket, and he ended up suing whatever was left of the Gein family. But look how close this is. This is the Gein family plot. This is his father, George, and his mother, Augusta. Now, on the left of Ed is Henry, his brother, and this is the grave of Ed Gein. Now, it's unmarked, but it's between his brother and his mother, and the reason there's no headstone here is because it kept getting stolen. I believe it is in storage at the police department locally here. They did recover it, but this is where he's buried at. Now, I'm not exactly sure who brought him flowers or anything like that, but I find that a little bit off that there's more flowers here for him than almost anybody else. But if you look here, people collect dirt here from his gravesite as keepsakes, and a lot of people sell it, and I'm not exactly sure where that comes from or, why people would do that. But that explains why these patches are here. But this is the final resting place of Ed Gein. Now, he died in 1984 of cancer in Madison, Wisconsin. He was institutionalized, and that's pretty much how he ended his life. But he ended up right here in the same cemetery as the people he dug up. Now, it's just one section over that is the final resting place of Bernice Warden, who was the final victim of Ed Gein. So we'll go and pay respects to her right now. Now, I really feel for a lot of these families because many of them did not get to bury their loved ones in a respectable way because of the way that their remains were handled. And, some of these grave sites are still empty. I mean, I don't believe that Bernice's is. I'm not 100% sure, but I know some of the other victims in this cemetery, they're still empty plots. Bernice C. Warden. Now, Ed Gein is just over here in the next section over. Now, imagine being a family member of one of these people and just knowing how close your loved one is to being buried next to the person who killed them. I just find that to be mind-blowing. But this is the exact same cemetery where Ed Gein would have came probably dozens of times to look for victims. Now, I will say that this was a little bit harder of a video to make just because of the nature of the things that happened and the topics and subject matter. But I hope you guys enjoyed being able to see a little bit of history and where it happened. And even though you can't agree with the things that Ed Gein did, it is still a part of history. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and be sure to check out other videos coming up. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and we'll catch you on the next one.